Welcome to Moonlight Lab, where we explore the darkest corners of human experience. Tonight, I have two true horror stories from the depths of Reddit. Stories of danger, deception, and narrow escapes, each one submitted by real people who lived through experiences they'll never forget. So settle in, let the rain wash over you, and prepare yourself for what's to come. Our first story takes us back to 2015. A young woman, fresh out of a bad relationship and new to her city, decides to meet someone from a dating app. He invites her to a backyard barbecue with his bandmates. It sounds harmless enough, casual, safe. But from the moment she arrives at that train station, nothing is as it seems. This story was submitted by a user named Feral_Doves to r/LetsNotMeet. Here's what happened. This took place back in 2015. I was around 21 years old at the time, and I had just gotten out of a bad relationship. I wasn't in the best place mentally, and I didn't know many people in town besides my ex and his friends. I was on a dating app, looking for people to hang out with casually. Maybe find some new friends. I matched with a 25-year-old guy. We'll call him Simon. We talked on and off for a few days. He told me he was in a band, living in a house with his bandmates. He sent me their music on YouTube. It was just audio with a heavily edited still image of 4 or 5 guys playing rock instruments. The music wasn't really for me, but he seemed nice enough. Then he stopped replying for a few days, and I figured that was that. But then one day at work, I got a message from him. He apologized for being busy and invited me to a barbecue with his friends and bandmates in their backyard. Now, normally, I would have just said no to going to a barbecue alone at the home of someone I barely knew. But I was really bored, and I thought maybe I could make some friends there, since he made it sound like a pretty big party. I looked up the neighborhood on maps. It was a suburban area with lots of families. I figured being in a backyard on a nice summer day wouldn't be too risky. Neighbors would be outside. Plus, it was just a few train stops from my workplace. I did tell him I wasn't comfortable with the idea since I didn't know him well, but I said I would stop by for a bit, if I didn't need to go inside the house at all. He said that was totally fine, which made me feel better. I even made sure not to drink anything for the rest of my shift, so I wouldn't need to use the bathroom. I asked Simon if he could meet me at the train station. He agreed. I arrived at the train station around 5:30. I looked around. He wasn't there. I sent him a message. He told me he was running behind and to just start walking toward the neighborhood. I was about halfway across the massive parking lot when I saw him slowly wandering toward me. I recognized his clothes from far away, bell-bottoms, long hair. But up close, his face looked pretty different from his photos, older looking, by 5 to 10 years maybe. This was the first red flag, but I brushed it off. Maybe he's just self-conscious. Maybe the photos were old. He was also clearly already drunk, but I didn't think too much of it. He's hosting a barbecue after all. The second red flag came when we arrived at the front door. I reminded him that I wasn't comfortable going inside the house. He assured me we would just have to walk through to get to the backyard. Okay, fine. We got in the house, and he immediately closed the door and locked the deadbolt behind me. I didn't think it was too weird. A lot of people lock the door when they come in, but it still gave me the heebie-jeebies. Then Simon told me he'd really like to give me a tour of the house. I politely declined and reminded him I was just there for the barbecue. He said he and his bandmates had worked really hard to get the house, and he was really proud of it. At this point, I was getting skeptical, but I convinced myself I was being unreasonable. I was already in the house anyway. He insisted the tour would be quick, so I went with it. The tour started pretty uneventfully, except the decor in the common areas was obviously chosen by a middle-aged homemaker, not a bunch of guys in a band. I didn't know if this should make me feel better or worse. The bedroom doors were all closed. The bathroom was unremarkable. Then he showed me the kitchen, and I finally saw through the window that there was nobody in the backyard. There weren't even barbecue supplies around. No burgers thawing on the counter, no cocktail supplies, nothing. I asked him where everyone was and why he lied about the barbecue. He told me his bandmates were still on tour. They were just running behind due to van trouble, but they should be back any minute so we could start the party. I asked him why he wasn't on tour with them if he's in the band. I don't even remember what his answer was, because it didn't make any sense. At this point, I'm out of mental gymnastics to convince myself this guy isn't completely full of shit, and I'm really freaked out. I started trying to figure out a way to get out of this situation. I hoped that once the tour was done, we could go outside, even just for a minute, and I'd just leave. I instinctively pretended to believe his lies. He offered me a beer. I said no thanks, I have to work in the morning. He cracked one for himself. Then he wanted to take the tour downstairs. I could see from the top of the stairs that the basement was dark, small windows, so I refused. I asked if we could go back outside. He said, after the tour. I tried to argue. I told him I have a spider phobia, don't like basements. He started to get agitated about my reluctance, so I figured it would be better to just let him show me the basement. The basement was fairly unremarkable. Couch, TV, exercise equipment, until I noticed something that gave me chills. The house was probably built in the 1990s, but I saw a door that looked just like the heavy, foam-lined door to the cold storage room in my grandma's house. The kind that only opened from the outside. It looked really out of place in this house. I would absolutely not go anywhere near that door. He opened it and told me it was their soundproof music studio. I looked inside from a few meters away. It did look soundproof. About the size of a bedroom, a few guitars and amps inside, mattress toppers on the walls, no drum kit, no recording equipment that I could see. He insisted I go inside to get a better look. He was standing outside the door, motioning for me to go in. The alarm bells are really going off now. At this point, I realized I could die here if I'm not careful, and I turned around to run up the stairs. He closed the door and followed me, asking what's wrong, acting like I'm being unreasonable. At that point, my main objective was getting out of the house. The front and back doors were both closed and locked. If I tried to run, he'd be able to get to me before I could get them open. The bathroom didn't have a window. The house had a confusing floor plan I wasn't familiar with, and he was much bigger than I am. Tall, lanky, the type who can run fast even when they're out of shape. I pretended that I was okay with hanging out with him in the hopes he'd calm down. We made small talk for a few minutes. He cracked another beer, and thankfully, he calmed down. I desperately mentioned that it was beautiful outside and suggested we go sit in the yard. He said no, and started to get agitated again. I told him I could stay, but I'd just really like to smoke a cigarette. He told me we could smoke cigarettes inside, and pointed to a cereal bowl full of cigarette butts. We sat down at the table and lit some cigarettes. As he was smoking, he started rolling a joint. He offered me some. I said no, thanks. He insisted, so I took the smallest puff I could. After we smoked, he asked if I'd like to watch a movie until his bandmates get back. I told him I was really looking forward to spending the day outside and suggested we go for a walk, ideas he did not like. At this point, I was trying to keep as much distance as possible, but he stayed close enough that I could smell the beer on his breath. He grabbed me by the waist. I backed away and asked about the barbecue food to try and change the subject. He started to get angry again and sternly told me his bandmates should be home any minute. My anxiety was absolutely through the roof. Now, I don't know how I got so lucky, but the next thing that happened might have saved me. Simon went to the fridge to get another beer and pulled out an empty box. At this point, he's getting even more upset than before, so I went out on a limb and suggested we go get some more beer for the party. Because I was out of ideas, I was terrified it would enrage him to suggest leaving the house again, but I had to try, thankfully. His eyes lit up with the possibility that I might actually be down to drink with him, and he agreed. As we were walking to the liquor store, I still didn't really have a plan, but I was extremely relieved to be out of that house. When we got to the liquor store, I told him I didn't need to go inside if he was just grabbing beer. He insisted I had to go inside. At that point, I was so stressed and frazzled, I just went with him and hoped a good opportunity to leave would arise. We went to pay. The cashier was kind of rude, so I didn't ask for help. I probably should have, but I panicked. I hoped there might be somebody in the parking lot who could help me if I made a scene, but there was nobody. I had one last idea before I took my chances, just trying to run. There was a drugstore across from the liquor store. I told Simon I had to go buy a toothbrush. He eagerly agreed to this, but tried to follow me into the store. I told him, "You're not allowed to bring beer into a drugstore." I don't know if that's even true, but luckily, he believed it and agreed to wait outside. I thought maybe I could just wander around this drugstore long enough and he would get the hint or get bored and leave. But no, I must have wandered around the store for at least half an hour, and he's still just standing there, staring in the window. This creep didn't even have his phone out. Every time I checked if he was still there, he was just staring through the window, looking for me. After being in there for so long, I was surprised he didn't come in to see what was taking me so long. I ended up hovering around the registers and waited until a big group of friendly-looking people were paying. I followed them out of the store and immediately told Simon to leave me alone and go home. I said it firmly and loudly enough to make it clear I would make a scene if I had to. Simon looked at the people getting in their car who were now pausing and looking at us, and then he just turned around and left. It was bizarrely anticlimactic, which I was very thankful for. I ran to the train station, and I never heard from him again. When I got home, his profile had either blocked me or been deleted. Years later, I wish I would have reported him. It bothers me to wonder if he tried it again with someone else. But at the time, I didn't think anybody would take me seriously. All I really had was a likely fake first name and a general idea of where the house was, which probably wasn't even his. I'll probably never know any more than I do now, and maybe that's for the best. That story was submitted by Feral_Doves to r/LetsNotMeet. Our next story takes a different turn. Sometimes the most terrifying moments don't involve strangers at all. Sometimes they happen in the places we're supposed to feel safest, with the people we think we know best. This story comes from r/LetsNotMeet. It's about a 9-year-old boy, home alone after school, waiting for his mother to return from work. He hears a sound outside his window, a sound like a cat meowing. His cat has been missing for 3 months, so he rushes downstairs, hoping it's finally come home. But what he finds on his patio is something he will never forget. Here's what happened. This happened when I was around 9 years old. I'm 25 now, and it's something I will never forget. It gives me goosebumps to this day. I live in a terraced house, 4 houses combined. My neighbors and I each have our own little patio. There's a small road about 10 meters from my yard where people do their Sunday walks. Only a small fence separates my yard from that road. I live in a pretty crowded area with several of these terraced houses spread around my neighborhood. So seeing people walking on that road is pretty normal for me. Seeing random people standing on my patio is not. When I was 9, I usually got home from school about an hour before my mom got home from work. I live maybe 50 meters away from school, so my mom figured I was mature enough to be home alone for around an hour. This one day, I got home from school. I did the usual thing, locked the front door, and double-checked that the back door leading to the patio was also locked. I was 9. Being alone was a little scary, even though it was in the middle of the day. I then rushed to my room upstairs to play as much PlayStation as possible before my mom came home and made me do homework. While playing, I heard this noise coming from outside my window. My room was located 1 floor over the patio with a view to the road. It was kind of like the sound of a cat, but my cat had been missing for over 3 months. Hope sparked, and I thought, oh my God, did he finally come back? I ran downstairs to check if it was my cat, but the sight that met me gives me goosebumps just writing this. There was a guy standing on my patio, a tall guy with black hair covering half of his eyes, making him look like a male version of the girl from The Ring or something. I could hear him making high-pitched sounds, almost like a cat meowing. A brown liquid was running down from his mouth, and I could see him spitting out my dad's cigarette butts. He was actually eating from the ashtray. I was frozen, observing this. Eventually, I snapped out of it and screamed so loud that the man must have heard it. He didn't react. He kept on eating from the ashtray. I ran upstairs to my room, locked the door, and called my mom, who then called the cops. I've never been more terrified in my life. Laying in bed under my sheets, shivering with fear as I hear these creepy, high-pitched noises from the guy eating cigarette butts from the ashtray on my patio. I kind of blacked out for a moment, because the next thing I remember is the police arriving on the road by my yard. I hear them talking to the guy, saying stuff like, "What are you doing? Get over here or we will come down and arrest you." He didn't respond, but the high-pitched sounds were more frequent and louder. I decided to look through the window, feeling safe now that the cops were there. I could see 2 police officers standing by my fence, 1 man and a woman. I did not see the man on my patio, however, because he was standing directly 1 story under me, outside my field of view. The police jumped the fence, and I remember hearing the guy screaming louder than anything I've ever heard before. He charged the female police officer with full force, and he knocked her out cold. The male officer then immediately tased the guy, leaving him shaking on the ground, screaming still. The policeman struggled to keep him on the ground while putting handcuffs on him, but eventually made it. After a while, he managed to wake up the female police officer, who seemed to be badly hurt. He called for backup and an ambulance, and then he sees me, standing in the window above him. The expression on my face must have been something else, because he just looked at me and said, "I sure as hell hope you didn't see all that." I started to cry. By this time, neighbors started to arrive, wondering what the hell was going on. One of my neighbors, an elderly woman, made me come down, and she took care of me until my mom came back home. The police took the man with them in the car and left. Before they left, they promised to come back and talk to us about what had happened. This is where the story takes an unexpected turn. The male police officer came back later that night and sat down with me and my mom to talk. He explained that the guy on my patio was actually diagnosed with severe autism. He had escaped a facility where mentally challenged people lived, located around 5 kilometers from where I live. He explained that the guy had actually been living in my house 5 years ago, but he had been forced to move when his mom, his only caretaker, died. The poor guy probably thought he would find his mom in my house. He missed the routines, and he missed living there with his mom. The police had to move him from the house 5 years ago because he was extremely strong. From what I heard, he had extreme muscle tension because of the autism, making his muscles grow stronger and stronger throughout the years. This was the reason he reacted the way he did when the police came that day. Still frightened, I told the police officer that he needed to make sure this would never happen again. He promised it wouldn't. After a few sleepless nights, my life got back to normal. The years went by, and the guy didn't come back until 1 year ago. At this time, my mom and dad had moved out. I bought the house from them, and I'm still living there today. I was enjoying my morning coffee on the patio when I see this random guy stopping on the road by my fence. He just stands there, looking at me. I look at him and give him a nod. And then I hear the high-pitched noises. Holy shit, it's him. His hair had turned gray, but the high-pitched sounds made me realize. My heart started racing, and I instantly remembered the reason why he was back. I realized that he must have managed to escape again, because I kept my cool a bit longer than when I was 9. I started to realize how sorry I felt for the guy. 16 years later, and he was back to look for his mom. I decided to carefully ask him if he wanted to come down to the patio. He instantly jumped the fence. I started to think he would knock me out like he did to that police officer. He didn't. He smiled. He looked at me and smiled. I offered him to sit down. He didn't respond. I offered him to come inside. He started laughing. We went inside. His face lit up. Pure joy. He was home. It reminded him of the life he had with his mom. It almost made me tear up. All of a sudden, he sat down in my couch, turned on my TV, and switched directly to the cartoons. I observed him for a while. He was just completely focused on the cartoons. I just wanted him to enjoy the moment, so I didn't say anything to him. I realized I had to call the facility to let them know. The caretakers arrived 10 minutes later. After a lot of convincing, he got back up, crying, and they went back to the facility. I called the facility 2 days later. We made a deal. His name is Tom, and I now consider Tom my friend. Every Sunday from the day he returned, Tom and his caretakers visit me to watch cartoons. They say it's the highlight of his week. It makes my heart warm. Now, for several years my thoughts were, let's not meet guy on my patio eating from the ashtray. Now my thoughts are, let's meet every Sunday to watch cartoons. My friend Tom, 2 stories. 2 encounters with the unexpected and the dangerous. If you have your own story to share, leave it in the comments below. And if you enjoyed these stories, subscribe to Moonlight Lab for more true horror, narrated with rain sounds. New videos every Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday at 6 p.m. Eastern. Until next time, sleep well.